Welcome. Today we're talking with church member Carol Kulp. Carol, would you tell us a little bit about your journey of growing in faith as a young adult?
I grew up in the Presbyterian church and sang in the choir and got married there. And then I married my childhood sweetheart, and we went on to start our family. But all the time I was going to the Presbyterian church, I never knew that you could really have a personal relationship with the Lord. I knew there was a God out there somewhere, but I really didn't know anything much about him. And at some point after I had 3 children, Elam Bible Study started a home mission Bible study. They sent missionaries out in the community to start these Bible studies. And so I was invited to attend with other neighbors and where I lived. And the first night I was there, I said to the leader, I said, how do you know that there's a God here, around? And she said, well, he's right here. And I felt him for the first time. And I went home that night and I went to bed and I felt God said to me, Carol, could you love me? And I said, yes. And he said, could you love me more than your family? And I wasn't too sure about that. I had to ponder it because I knew I loved my kids, I loved my husband. But then as I thought about it, I thought, they really don't know my innermost being. So I said to the Lord, yes, I can love you. And the next day I got up and the grass was greener. Everything was brighter. It was a whole new day. And I really knew God loved me. So I got excited. I wanted to go out and tell everybody about the Lord. I was going to be a missionary. I was gung-ho to go out and spread the word. Well, that wasn't what the Lord had in mind for me. He kept me home. And that was really kind of hard for me. And to top it off, he would send other people's kids for me to babysit while they went out and told others about the Lord. And so I thought, So anyway, that's what happened. He just kept me home.
Your family has an incredible story of growing both by birth and adoption. Would you tell us how that unfolded?
Life went on. We had 3 more children. Our 6th child was born with Down syndrome. And so life just really became very interesting from then on. When he was born, the doctors it was on the cusp of when people were told to put their babies in institutions. But we decided to bring Matthew home and treat him as one of the gang. And so life went on. And when he was about 5 or 6 years old, he got hit by a car and we nearly lost him. And he was in the hospital for 6 weeks in very serious condition. We were told that one of his legs would have to be amputated. And so it was really a stressful time. I called everybody when he went in the hospital to pray for him, because I knew that, for him to survive, he was going to have to, if the Lord intervened. And so he hung in there, and at the end of 6 weeks, he was sent home with a cast down both legs. We were told when the cast came off that leg would have to be amputated. So when it was time for the cast to come off, and my husband took him back to the doctor for it to be removed, the doctor stuck pins in his foot, and Matthew let out a scream. And the doctor said, oh my gosh, he's got feeling in that leg. So needless to say, he kept his legs. So life went on with him home. He had a couple more operations after that. And then things settled down. And some of our older children were leaving the nest. And so we had an empty bed. And an empty bed in our house was just something we weren't used to. So we thought, well, we'll take in a foster child. But meanwhile, the Democrat and Chronicle was featuring a Child is Waiting series. And once a week they would have pictures of children that were available for adoption. And so we saw a picture of David and Suzanne, and they had Down syndrome. And we thought, oh, look at those kids, aren't they cute? And so then life went on, and then around Halloween time, my husband and I took the kids down to the haunted house that the Chamber of Commerce was putting on. And while we were waiting to get in, they had a board with children's pictures on it. And there again were David and Suzanne's pictures. And we said, oh, look, there's those kids. They're still up for adoption. Well, a few days later, friends of ours popped over and we got talking about us taking in a foster child. And they said, why don't you think about adopting David and Suzanne? And we said, no, we can't adopt. And they said, why not? And we said, no, we can't adopt. And so the next day, my friend popped in and she said, I called to inquire about the kids and they're waiting for you to call. And so I called up to find out about them. And I said to the gal at the other end, this is the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And she said, that's okay. We all felt the same way. And so I learned from that a lot of times when God calls you to do something, he prepares you ahead of time. And we were being prepared ahead of time without even knowing about it. So we were invited to an adoption party that the county was putting on. And David and Suzanne were brought. And it was just a very informal time to meet the children. And Suzanne climbed up on my husband's lap and called him Daddy. So on February 9th, on David's 16th birthday, the two of them were placed in our home. Now, they were not brother and sister, but they had been brought up from birth in the same foster home. So they came booming into our life. And it was a very interesting time. But a year later, we went on to adopt Sarah.
What led you to connect here at PPC?
In 2016, in 2014, my husband passed away. And we were living in Pittsford at that time. And then in 2016, I moved to Fairport. So somehow or other, I found out about the grief group that was meeting here. So I attended. And then my son Matthew, that lived in the group home, was a member here. So I kind of naturally went from the grief group to coming on Sundays to sit with him. And I just discovered how welcoming everybody was here. And his whole group home would come. And from the time we adopted the children, we never felt like we belonged in a spiritual community. I felt like we were on the outside looking in. I thought the community would really kind of embrace them, and to some degree they did when the kids were smaller, but as they got older, they really didn't fit in anywhere in the church. And so just for me to have that comforting feeling after being here, that, Matthew belongs here, I thought, So I stayed. I still wasn't sure where I fit in here. And I started going to the first Friday, and I began meeting the people. And that was just, I think it just drew me right in to knowing that I belonged. And then I started in the Bible study here. And so from that time on, I feel like I've come full circle in my spiritual journey, as far as finding a place where I belong. When I first became a Christian through the home Bible study, I met with several of us, and we started a home church. And that was just a small group, so we all grew together on our spiritual journey, went on together where we could support and help each other, and we could share. And so once I found the Bible study here, and I began to grow with them, and we grew with each other, and we could share, or what have you, it really kind of cemented my place here.
Carol, how are you thinking about this stage of your life?
For me, there's kind of a freedom in a way. I feel comfortable in my spiritual journey. I feel at peace. I know my life here on earth isn't going to last probably too many more years, but I'm excited. I'm excited to know that, where I'm going to be. And I don't worry about, really my age. At this point, I am who I am. So at this stage of my life, as I look back, I think, this is my story, this is my song. But then when I think about that some more, I think, no, it's not my story, it's the Lord's story.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
And thank you for listening.
My pleasure.
Lead us now.